On a chilly evening in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, Canada, on October 15, 2024, Hassan Farah pulled his taxi into the lot of the Red Shore Cab Company, the engine's hum fading as he rubbed his tired eyes. At 45, Hassan, a Somali Canadian, was a wiry man with a close-cropped beard and a calm demeanor that masked the strain of his 12-hour shifts. Charlottetown, a city of 38,000, was a quaint blend of red brick buildings, waterfront pubs, and rolling fields, its charm drawing tourists, but not always kindness for newcomers like Hassan. He'd moved here 7 years ago with his wife, Amina, a daycare worker, and their 2 kids, Yusuf, 14, and Layla, 10, fleeing Toronto's hustle for a quieter life. But quiet came with a price, one Hassan paid daily as a black Muslim driver in a mostly white town. Hassan's job was steady, ferrying tourists, students, and locals across Charlottetown's compact streets, but the undercurrent of prejudice was constant. Passengers often asked, "Where are you from?" despite his Canadian accent, or hesitated to enter his cab, eyes lingering on his skin. Dispatchers, like Gary Thompson, favored white drivers for prime routes, leaving Hassan with late-night fares or rural runs. Last week, a customer, a white man in his 50s, had refused to pay, muttering, "You lot always overcharge," before slamming the door. Hassan reported it to Gary, who shrugged. "Just let it go, mate. Don't make a fuss." Hassan did, needing the job, but the slight burn joining a pile of others. Tonight, as Hassan logged his fares, Gary leaned into the office, his voice clipped. "Hassan, your GPS log's off again. Fix it or you're off the roster." Hassan's jaw tightened. He'd checked the GPS twice. Its glitch is a company issue, not his. "It's working, Gary," he said, his tone even. Gary's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart. Customers complain when you're late." The word "you" was heavy, and Hassan knew the subtext. Black, Somali, Muslim, not one of us. He nodded, adjusting the log, his hands steady but his chest tight. He thought of Amina's overtime, Yusuf's soccer fees, Layla's art classes. Losing shifts wasn't an option. At home, a modest duplex on Kent Street, Hassan found Amina cooking jollof rice, her hijab loose after a long day. "Rough shift?" she asked, her Somali accent soft. Hassan shrugged, kissing her forehead. "Same old." He didn't mention Gary's jab or the note he'd found under his wiper last month. "Terrorist, go home." He'd torn it up, hiding it from Amina, but its echo lingered. Their neighbor, Mrs. Helen McDonald, a white retiree, had already complained about their loud music, Quran recitations, barely audible, and suggested they blend in better. Hassan ignored it, but Amina's worried eyes said she felt the sting. Yusuf, sprawled on the couch, looked up from his phone. "Dad, Ethan at soccer said I'm only on the team because of diversity. Coach didn't say anything." Hassan's heart sank. Ethan, a teammate, had been taunting Yusuf for weeks, mirroring the slights Hassan faced. "You're there because you're good, Yusuf," he said, his voice firm. "Keep playing." Layla, coloring nearby, piped up, "Why's everyone mean?" Hassan forced a smile. "Not everyone, Layla, just a few." But the few were growing. Gary, Helen, Ethan's dad, customers, a chorus of whispers testing their place in Charlottetown. On October 16th, the harassment sharpened. Hassan picked up a fare, a white woman in her 40s, who clutched her purse as she entered. "You're not one of those refugees, are you?" she asked, her tone casual but cutting. Hassan's grip on the wheel tightened. "I'm Canadian, ma'am. Born in Toronto." She didn't reply, paying the fare but leaving no tip. At the depot, Gary called him in. "Got a complaint, Hassan. Lady said you were rude. Watch it, or you're on thin ice." Hassan's anger flared. He'd been polite, professional, but Gary's smirk said the truth didn't matter. "I'll watch it," Hassan said, his voice low, needing the hours. That afternoon, Hassan found his taxi's side mirror cracked, Somali scum scratched into the paint. He photographed it, his hands shaking, but didn't call the police. Sergeant Tom Reynolds had dismissed the last note as pranks. He showed Amina, her face crumpling. "Hassan, this isn't safe," she whispered. "We can't keep ignoring it." Vikash, home early, nodded. "We need cameras, like in Toronto. Proof? Then we act." Hassan agreed, but dread gnawed at him. Cameras cost money, and accusing Gary, Helen, or their allies risked his job, their home. They'd moved for the kids, but Charlottetown was a maze of quiet hate. On October 17th, the pressure deepened. Hassan arrived at the depot to find his shift cut, 3 days instead of 5. "Scheduling issues," Gary said, avoiding his eyes. "White drivers got priority." The word white hung unspoken, but Hassan felt it. At home, Yusuf admitted Ethan had tripped him at practice, whispering jihadi. Layla came home with a torn drawing, her teacher saying it was an accident. Amina's voice broke. "We're losing, Hassan." He took her hand, his resolve hardening. "We're not. We get proof, we fight, quietly." But as he lay awake, the note's words, "terrorist, go home," burned. He was Somali-Canadian, his roots here, but Polokwane was testing them, and Hassan's fight was just beginning. On October 18, 2024, Hassan Farah sat in the driver's seat of his taxi outside the Red Shore Cab Company in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, checking the new dashboard camera he'd installed that morning. The device, a $200 expense that stretched his family's budget, blinked its red light, a silent sentinel against the racism gnawing at his life. At 45, Hassan, a Somali-Canadian, felt the weight of the past week, a note under his wiper demanding, "Terrorist, go home." His taxi's mirror cracked with Somali scum scratched into it, and dispatcher Gary Thompson cutting his shifts for a baseless, rude complaint. Charlottetown's crisp autumn air carried more than chill. It held a venom that threatened his job, his family, and their place in this city of 38,000. Hassan's wife Amina had urged action after the vandalism, her daycare shifts leaving her drained but resolute. "We can't let this slide, Hassan," she'd said, her eyes fierce. Their kids, Yusuf, 14, and Layla, 10, were caught in the crossfire. Yusuf facing jihadi taunts at soccer, Layla's artwork torn at school. Hassan had agreed to the camera, hiding it from Gary to avoid trouble. But proof was a double-edged sword. Reporting to the police, Sergeant Tom Reynolds, who dismissed the note as pranks, risked backlash, and confronting Gary or their neighbor, Helen McDonald, could cost his shifts. He needed the income for Amina's overtime, Yusuf's gear, Layla's classes. At the depot, Gary leaned into the office, his voice sharp. "Hassan, you're late on 2 fares last night. Customers aren't happy." Hassan's jaw tightened. He'd been on time, the GPS logs clear. "I'll check the system, Gary," he said, his tone even. But Gary's smirk said the truth didn't matter. "Do better or you're out," he snapped, leaving. Hassan's hands shook as he adjusted the camera, its feed saved to his phone. He thought of Helen's blend-in jab, her complaints about their Quran recitations. The note, the mirror, Gary's cuts, they weren't random, Hassan knew, but proving a pattern was a gamble. At home on Kent Street, Amina was folding laundry, her hijab loose. "Any trouble?" she asked, her voice soft but searching. Hassan showed her the camera feed, empty so far. "Gary's pushing me out," he said, his voice low. "And the fares. People keep asking if I'm a refugee." Amina's eyes darkened. "They don't ask white drivers that." "We need more, Hassan. Cameras at home, too." Yusuf, kicking a soccer ball in the living room, overheard. "Ethan's dad was at practice again, Dad. Said I'm too aggressive. Coach benched me." Hassan's heart sank. Ethan's dad, a friend of Gary's, was part of the web. "You're not aggressive, Yusuf," he said, his voice firm. "You're strong." Layla, drawing at the table, looked up. "My teacher said my art's too loud. Is that bad?" Hassan hugged her, his chest tight. "Your art's perfect, Layla." But Amina's silence was heavy. She saw the pattern. Helen, Ethan's dad, Gary, the school. A quiet campaign to push them out. "We're not leaving," she said, her voice fierce. "This is our home." Hassan nodded, but fear gnawed at him. The taxi's repairs, the camera, Amina's overtime, they were stretched thin, and Charlottetown's whispers were louder than its welcome. On October 19th, the camera caught something. Hassan, checking the feed during a break, saw footage from 1 a.m. A figure in a dark jacket scratching his taxi's door, the word raghead faint but clear. The build matched Gary's stocky frame, and he glanced toward Helen's house, her porch light on. Hassan's pulse raced. He sent the clip to Amina, texting, "It's Gary, Helen's in it." Amina replied, "Don't confront yet. We need more." But Hassan's patience was fraying. He pictured Gary's smirk, Helen's blend-in, Ethan's taunts. They were a net tightening around his family. At the depot, Gary assigned Hassan a rural fare, 2 hours, low pay, while white drivers got downtown runs. "You're lucky to have work," Gary said, his eyes cold. Hassan nodded, his camera rolling, capturing the jab. A customer, a white man, refused to enter his cab, muttering, "I don't trust these types." Hassan drove on, his anger a quiet flame, but the fare's refusal cost him $20. At home, Yusuf admitted Ethan had shoved him at practice, whispering, "Bomb boy." Layla's teacher sent a note citing disruptive behavior for her colorful art. Amina's voice shook. "It's everywhere, Hassan. We can't keep swallowing it." That evening, Hassan found a new note under his door. Leave or pay. The typed letters matched the first, a cold echo of terrorist. Amina's hands trembled as she bagged it, Layla asleep upstairs. We need to talk to Helen, she said, her voice low. She's the weak link. Hassan agreed, his resolve hardening. Quietly, we get her to crack. We stop this. But dread lingered. Helen's husband, Ron, was a retired cop tied to Sergeant Reynolds. Confronting her risked their duplex, his job, everything. On October 20th, the harassment deepened. Hassan arrived at the depot to find his taxi's tires slashed, costing $400 to replace. Gary shrugged. Tough luck, mate. Pay up or walk. Hassan photographed the damage, his evidence folder growing. Notes, footage, Gary's jabs. At school, Yusuf's soccer bag was lost. Ethan's smirk, proof enough. Layla came home with a bruise, saying a classmate bumped her. Amina's eyes welled. Hassan, we're losing them. He took her hand, his voice steady. We're not. We get proof, we fight. For Yusuf, for Layla, for us. But as he checked the home camera, installed that day, he saw Ron's car idling outside, a warning in the rain. Charlottetown's shadows were closing in, and Hassan's quiet fight was running out of road. On October 21st, 2024, Hassan Farah stood outside his neighbor's duplex on Kent Street, Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, his breath visible in the chilly dusk as he held a printed still from his taxi's dashboard camera. The image captured at 1 a.m. 2 days ago showed Gary Thompson, his dispatcher, scratching raghead into the vehicle's door, glancing at Helen McDonald's lit porch. At 45, Hassan, a Somali Canadian, was a fortress against weeks of racism. Notes demanding, terrorist, go home, and leave or pay. A cracked mirror scrawled with Somali scum, slashed tires, and Gary's shift cuts for baseless, rude complaints. His job at Red Shore Cab Company, his family's lifeline, was slipping. And Charlottetown's quiet streets hid a venom that threatened his wife, Amina, and their kids, Yusuf, 14, and Layla, 10. Amina stood beside him, her hijab framing a face set with resolve. We do this calm, she said, her daycare worker's hands steady despite fear. Helen talks, we get answers. Helen, their white neighbor whose blend-in jabs and complaints about their Quran recitations veiled prejudice, was their target. Her porch light during the vandalism tied her to Gary, and her husband Ron, a retired cop, linked to Sergeant Tom Reynolds, who dismissed earlier notes as pranks. Hassan nodded, his anger a quiet flame. The notes, the tires, Yusuf's soccer taunts, Layla's torn art, they couldn't wait. They knocked, Helen's face appearing, her smile thin. Hassan, Amina, what's up? She asked, her voice high. Hassan held up the still. This is Gary, Helen, vandalizing my taxi. Your light was on, you saw it. Helen's eyes flicked to the image, her hands twisting her scarf. I don't know anything, she stammered, but Ron emerged, his bulk looming. You accusing us? He growled. Amina's voice was ice. We're asking, Ron. Your porch, Gary's knife, the notes, stop it, or we go further. Ron's face reddened, but Helen's hand gripped his arm. We didn't do nothing, she whispered, her voice cracking. Hassan's eyes held hers. Tell Gary to back off, you know why. They left, Ron's glare a warning, but no note came that night, a brittle calm. At the depot, Gary's hostility sharpened. On October 22nd, he cut Hassan's shifts to 2 days, citing customer feedback. You're costing us, Farah, he said, his smirk bold. Hassan's camera, hidden in his taxi, caught it, the audio clear. Stick to your kind, mate. Hassan's hands shook as he saved the clip, his evidence folder growing, notes, photos of the mirror and tires, Gary's vandalism. Affair, a white woman, refused his cab, muttering ISIS, her words a sting he added to his notes. At home, Yusuf's soccer bag was found, torn and muddy, Ethan's laugh proof enough. Layla's teacher called, citing attitude for her sketching in class, a veiled jab at her Somali roots. Amina's voice broke. They're everywhere, Hassan, we're losing ground. On October 23rd, the home camera caught gold. At 2 a.m., a figure, Ron, his retired cop's build unmistakable, spray-painted "Go Back" on their duplex's garage. A note was left. Last warning. Hassan's heart raced as he showed Amina, Yusuf, and Layla asleep. It's them, he whispered, his voice shaking. Amina's eyes hardened. We confront Gary next. He's the head. Hassan hesitated, fear spiking. Gary's ties to Ron and Reynolds could cost his job, but Amina's grip was fierce. We're not running. We need this. Hassan nodded, his resolve steel. Tomorrow we end it. That day, Hassan picked up a fare. a black student named Malik who lingered after paying. "I saw your taxi, man," he said, his voice low. "The scratches. My brother got the same last year. Keep proof." Hassan nodded, gratitude mixing with dread. "Thanks, Malik." But fares were scarce, the depot's bias clear. White drivers got prime runs, Hassan got scraps. At school, Yusuf faced Ethan's shove, his coach ignoring it. Layla's art was lost, her teacher's accident excuse hollow. Amina, home late, found a new scratch on their car. "Muzzy." "It's coordinated," she said, her voice trembling. "Gary, Helen, Ron, Ethan's dad." Hassan's folder, footage, notes, photos, was heavy, but using it meant risking everything. That evening, Hassan and Amina knocked on Gary's door, a tidy bungalow on Queen Street. Gary answered, his stocky frame filling the doorway, his smirk fading at the still of him vandalizing the taxi. "What's this?" he demanded. Hassan's voice was calm, lethal. "You, Gary, scratching my car. We have Ron, too, painting our house. Stop, or we take this further." Amina held up her phone, the clip paused. "We know about the shifts, the complaints, Helen's light. It ends now." Gary's face paled, but his voice was low. "You're digging your grave, Farah. No one will care." Hassan stood firm. "We're Canadians. This is our home. Try us." They left. Gary's silence a crack in his armor, but Hassan's hands shook, the cost of defiance steep. On October 24th, the taxi was untouched, no notes, a tense quiet. But Gary assigned Hassan one shift, a rural run, his bias blatant. A customer, a white man, paid half, muttering foreigner. At home, Yusuf's coach called, citing team fit to bench him. Ethan's dad's influence clear. Layla's teacher sent a note urging cultural adjustment. Amina's eyes welled. "Hassan, we're breaking." He took her hand, his voice steady. "We're not. We have enough. If they push, we go to the police." Amina nodded, her fear easing. They were Somali Canadians, their roots deep, but Charlottetown's thorns were sharp, and their fight was far from over. On October 25th, 2024, Hassan Farah parked his taxi outside his duplex on Kent Street, Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, his hands steady on the wheel as he checked the dashboard camera's latest feed. The footage from 3 nights ago, Ron McDonald, Helen's retired cop husband, spray painting "Go Back" on their garage, leaving a note with last warning, was a grenade in his pocket, shared only with his wife, Amina. At 45, Hassan, a Somali Canadian, was a bulwark against months of racism. Notes demanding "terrorist, go home," and "leave or pay." A cracked mirror scrawled with "Somali scum," slashed tires, and dispatcher Gary Thompson's shift cuts and vandalism. Caught on tape, his job at Red Shore Cab Company was hanging by a thread, and Charlottetown's icy streets hid a venom that threatened Amina, Yusuf, 14, and Layla, 10. The confrontations with Helen and Gary had bought a fragile pause. No new notes, no scratches, but Hassan felt the town's pulse, tense and waiting. Amina, her daycare shifts grueling, stood firm. "We've got enough," she said, reviewing the evidence folder. Gary's raghead vandalism, Ron's graffiti, photos of notes, audio of Gary's "stick to your kind," Yusuf's soccer taunts and Layla's school slights, torn art, cultural adjustment. Notes mirrored their parents' fight. Hassan had nodded, his resolve iron. "We end this, Amina, for the kids." But Gary's power at the depot, Ron's cop ties, and Helen's complicity were a wall, and every move risked their duplex, his shifts, their home. At the depot, Gary's bias was blatant. On October 26th, he cut Hassan's shift to 1 day, handing prime fares to white drivers. "You're on probation, Farah," he said, his eyes cold. "Too many complaints." Hassan's camera, still hidden, caught it, the audio clear. "You don't fit here, mate." His hands shook as he saved the clip, his folder now a vault, notes, footage, photos, a fare's ISIS slur. A customer, a white man, paid half, muttering "immigrant scam," and Hassan added it to his notes, his anger a quiet ember. At home, Yusuf's coach benched him again. Ethan's dad's team fit, excuse a knife. Layla's teacher sent a drawing back, marked "inappropriate" for its Somali patterns. Amina's voice trembled. "They're breaking us, Hassan." On October 27th, the storm struck. Hassan arrived at the depot to find his taxi's windshield smashed, black filth scrawled in marker. A note was tucked inside. "You're done." Amina, seeing it, gasped, tears falling. "Hassan, this is too much." He checked the camera. 1 a.m., Gary and a second figure, likely Ethan's dad, smashing the glass. "We've got them," Hassan said, his voice steel. "We go to Helen again. She's the crack." Amina nodded, her fear easing. "No police, not yet, but we end it." Yusuf, overhearing, clenched his fists. I'm tired of Ethan, Dad. Layla, clutching a new drawing, whispered, I want them to stop. Hassan hugged them, his heart heavy. We're stopping it, Layla. Together. That evening, Hassan and Amina returned to Helen's duplex, the garage footage on Hassan's phone. Helen answered, her face pale, Ron looming behind. What now? She stammered. Hassan's voice was calm, unyielding. This is Ron painting our house, Gary smashing my taxi. You knew, Helen, stop it or we take this further. Amina held up her phone, the clip paused. We have notes, audio, everything. Your silence is over. Ron's eyes blazed, but Helen's voice cracked. We didn't mean… I'll talk to Gary, Ron, please, no trouble. Ron growled. You'll regret this. But Helen's grip held him back. They left, Helen's promise a flicker, but Hassan's hands shook. The cost was rising. On October 28th, the tide turned. The taxi was untouched, no notes, a brittle quiet. Gary restored Hassan's shifts to 3 days, his tone curt but subdued. Misunderstanding, he muttered, avoiding Hassan's eyes. A customer, a black woman, tipped extra, whispering, I heard about your cab, stay strong. At school, Yusuf's coach played him, Ethan's dad absent, his taunts silenced. Layla's teacher praised her new art, a Somali-Canadian flag, a small shift. Amina found a note in their mailbox. Sorry. It was unsigned, shaky, maybe Helen's, maybe Gary's guilt. The depot's fares evened out, Hassan's runs fairer, the evidence folder untouched but heavy. That night, Hassan stood in his duplex's small garden, the Charlottetown stars bright above. Amina, Yusuf, and Layla joined him, Layla's drawing pinned to the fridge. A family in a taxi, stars overhead. The notes, the scratches, the slurs, they'd scarred him, but so had Amina's fire, Yusuf's strength, Layla's art, Malik's tip. They'd fought in silence, no crowds, no noise, and claimed their place. Hassan whispered to the stars, this is our road, our fight. Carry it, share it, light the way. He saw others, drivers, families, kids like his, holding their story, passing it like a beacon to defy the dark, a flame no hate could douse.